had like 3 pomegranates within a week in November. I love pomegranates.
They are so good. We would have been stuck in the underworld forever. I don't think I could eat 6 sweets.
Months and months and months.
You are.
Hades would be like, please leave.
Like, I'm not done eating these
all
pomegranates.
My pomegranates.
Yeah, I know. All right. Are you ready to start?
Yes.
All right, good. You're listening to Let's Stay Together, a podcast about Fruits Basket by Natsuki Takaya. I'm Ellen.
And I'm Kayla.
And today we're discussing chapter 67 and 68 of Fruits Basket.
Woo.
I'm so excited, actually, because...
These are some good, meaty chapters.
They're really good. I read it kind of... Usually my process is that I read them through the first time. I read them through like I'm just enjoying it for myself and kind of think about what I want to say. And then I actually like write the actual thing that I'm going to say. So the first time I was like, ooh, it's going to be so good when we talk about it. My hands are clasped in excitement. You can't see it. This is... I'm just telling the people.
People have to know.
They have to know. Oh, before we start, also thank you. We got some Ko-fis, so thank you all for sending in Ko-fis. They're really nice. I really appreciate it. It makes me excited every time.
Thank you.
We get one, so we're very generous. Thank you so much. Thank you for supporting us. So chapter 67 begins in the... Oh, sorry. So we're gonna do our summary and discussion and our spoiler discussion like we always do. I just felt like I needed to say it. It's the routine.
It's tradition.
Yeah. It's the tradition. 35 episodes of tradition. Okay. Chapter 67. It picks up in the middle of the conversation that we left off at last time between Shishou and Tohru. Tohru tells Shishou what Akito told her at the beach. Someday Kyo will be confined, and the other Junichi will go back to living among the Soma, and that they can't be apart. And, she says, both Shishou and her looking apprehensive, that Akito-san is everyone's master. A page reveals an image of Akito surrounded by camellia flowers. So there's this flower imagery that we've seen before that's associated with Akito, and we've talked about it before, I believe. But specifically, Akito is shown surrounded by flowers, leaning against something. A bird lies down on the floor. Blood and feathers can be seen trailing away from Akito's right hand, over his clothes and onto the floor beside the bird, as if he was somehow the cause. Akito closes his eyes in a pained expression, and then we transition back to this conversation. Tohru remembers Akito's words from the beach: stay out of it. Stop trying to destroy our happiness. We transition back to the conversation between Shishou and Tohru. If the future that Akito-san told me about is true, Tohru says, if it's because of the curse, I think that I want to break the curse, Tohru says earnestly to Shishou, whose eyes widen in surprise. She asks him again humbly, bowing her head, if you know anything about the curse, please, would you tell me? I'll never cause you more trouble, I swear. Please. Why do you bow your head? Shishou asks. Tohru's a bit surprised by this response. Why must you go so far? Shishou imagines her returning with Kyo after she learned about his true form and thinks, you've already done far more than enough. So many things for all of us. And he closes his eyes and looks down. I will tell you frankly, in answer to your question about the curse and how to break it, I do not know clearly myself. But the future you describe with Kyo confined to the other Zodiac living together in isolation is quite likely. Tohru looks dismayed and Shishou continues, of course, I do not intend to let such a future happen without fighting it. Shishou explains that none of the Junichi have a strong enough will to oppose Akito, that they have intense feelings toward Akito. But then he suddenly realizes he forgot to serve tea, and there's an adorable exchange where Tohru, where he stares at the tea and wonders how to make it, and Tohru ends up making it for them, which is very charming. Shishou goes on to say that he has never been afraid of Akito. Akito, he says, is like a small child. He only knows how to scream and cry as if he's on fire. We see another image of Akito standing inside a circular window, as Akito is typically pictured, with his kimono looking sort of disheveled and coat characteristically kind of off the shoulder. But to the Zodiac members, Akito is special, a godlike being to be feared and respected. Words that from any other mouth would make them flinch, when said by Akito, cause such pain in their hearts as if their bodies are being torn apart. Akito and the Junichi exist in a world that outsiders like us can never fully understand. A connection formed from the blood that pulses through their bodies, a bond of blood. Realization dawns on Tohru's face. The bond is the curse? She asks, eyes wide. I do not have any positive proof, Shishou says, and Tohru looks away. She remembers Momichi saying, because that's the curse. A bond, she says, and thinks of her mother smiling, is something sacred. She thinks, to break a sacred bond, I truly would deserve to be punished. It might not even be possible to break it, but I won't give up easily. Tohru tells Shishou that she won't give up. I want to think there's something that I can do. So, is that your nature? Shishou asks with a smile. Sorry I couldn't be of any help. And then Tohru freaks out and tells him not to apologize, and he thanks her for being concerned about Kyo. She's like, oh no, really? And then, nervously serves the tea. Shishou thinks that he didn't want Tohru to know that Kyo would be confined, and has a memory of a woman with a darkened face wearing a kimono saying, it's just too pitiful, isn't it? Shishou thinks that he's being selfish. I keep using that girl, he thinks. What is it exactly that I want? Whatever happens, we Soma have no one to blame but ourselves. Because we can do nothing to change things, we have sunk into a dark world. We are powerless. Tohru interrupts Shishou from his thoughts and asks if Kyo is getting stronger. And she smiles as she hands him tea and says that he's gotten taller. He might even get taller than Shishou one day. I'd like to see that, she adds with a big smile, and Shishou smiles knowingly back, and she's like, eh. Shishou says if there's anything that you can do, it might just be to smile for them. When you smile, the world seems a little kinder. For you to just be yourself is a very important thing, I think. Tohru is surprised and blushes. No, heaven forbid, and then they both laugh. Shishou says to visit again with Kyo, and they'll let her, they'll have another fight that she can see, and she excitedly replies that she'd love to see it. And we transition away, and Shishou thanks. In doing so, I pray that the time that he spends with you will become his support, and that he'll form a new bond. Outside, at the dojo, I guess, Kagura comes upon Kyo getting water out of a tap outside of the yard, and he fiddles with his bracelet she sees. She looks away, face darkened. She runs up to Kyo and hugs him from behind. Oh, I really missed you, she says. And Kyo is just like, we just saw each other, and Kagura complains about how little he comes to the dojo. He remembers Shishou telling him to cherish the time that he spends in Shigure's house. Kagura asks what souvenir he brought her from the summer house, and he's like, huh? Nothing. Because, what would you bring from your own family's vacation home? I don't know. Meanie, she shouts, and she pushes him through the fence. And in my head, this is retribution for when Shishou pushed Kyo through Shigure's fence. Shishou's fence won, Shigure's fence won, right? No. Is that any way to treat your girlfriend? You have no love, Kagura says. And Kyo kind of grabs her head to stop her and calmly says, there's something I want to tell you. She looks at him with wide eyes and cuts him off before he can explain. Let's go on a date. If you go on a date with me, I'll listen to what you have to say. If you don't, I won't listen. He's like, wait, and she cuts him off again. For my whole life, I'll never listen to what you have to say. Kyo looks taken aback. She looks down and hugs him again. Please just humor me a little longer, she says. We transition back to Tohru, who's leaving Shishou's. He asks, and she tells him that she hasn't told Kyo that she knows about his confinement. And then they say goodbye and part. As she walks away, she thinks, I have to think hard about what I can do about the curse. And she remembers Shishou's words, for you to be yourself. And imagines the similar things that her mother and Shigure and Yuki said to her. She has these three memories that are, it's like her mother, Shigure, and what looks like Shigure and Yuki. She remembers the time that Kyo brought her rice porridge when she was sick. And when he was telling her to kind of get back to her normal dumb self, or whatever exactly it was that he said. She remembers him looking across the table at her, blushing, and her eyes widen. She suddenly notices Rin approaching on the street, and Tohru calls out to her. Tohru asks how Rin has been, and asks if she's feeling better, and Rin straight up walks around her without answering, and then, not facing Tohru, Rin says, you're hanging around the stomas. Stop it. At Shishou's, Rin barges in without taking off her shoes and drops her bag straight on the floor, and Kunimitsu is same as always. She slides open the door to where Shishou is, who's looking out a window, and he calmly greets her and is like, what's the matter? You're scowling at me. I saw that girl leaving here, Rin says. What did she come here for? Did something happen? Shishou pauses, and then he turns back to the window. She came here to ask me the same questions you did, he says. We see Rin's clenched hand on the door frame, and Tohru walking away. Looking determined, I think, Rin says, I won't let her get involved. At Shigure's house, Tohru tells Yuki that she saw Rin, and then immediately awkwardly tries to cover up that she saw Rin at Shishou's house because it was supposed to be a secret that she went there. And Toru's like, I saw her in the middle of town, right in the middle of town, really. But fortunately, Yuki doesn't think anything of her weird behavior and wonders if he can maybe find Rin in her school, because I think he still wants to try to talk to her. He's been trying to talk to her when they ran into her at the beach house, right? And she didn't have want anything to do with him. Shigure comes in and offers them snacks, and Kyo arrives as well. Tohru, he says, and she's like, well, of course I didn't go. And he's like, what? And she's like, nothing, what did you want? And he says that he'll be away on Sunday, so he won't be home for dinner. Shigure teases him about it being a date, and Kyo, like, forcefully covers Toru's ears to keep her from hearing. And Yuki's like, you have time for a date, but you won't pick up Tohru from work. And Kyo's like, that's your job, as if that makes sense. And Yuki reacts accordingly by saying nothing from the cloudy, dark corner of the room. Kyo is like, what's with those aren't you stupid eyes? Shigure makes a joke about taking Tohru for himself, and Kyo shoves his hand in his face, and Yuki sasses Shigure. So it's just your average kind of interaction at Shigure's house to round out the chapter. There's a panel of Shishou again at the end, and his thoughts. You don't see it for yourself, what you give to everyone. The gifts that pour out from your heart. In the last panel, we see Tohru, Yuki, Shigure, and Kyo sitting at the table, eating together, and that's the end of the chapter. I was surprised that he was sitting at the table, fully facing legs under the table, for once.
Yeah. He's still got his elbow on the table and is grumping.
Yeah,
but...
he's still disgruntled, but he's sitting there. There's so much growth in this chapter.
Food-related growth.
Always. So, chapter 68 opens with Kagura. So we're transitioning away. So basically, chapter 67 kind of focused on Tohru. Now we're going to focus on Kagura. So a lot of the content in this chapter is Kagura's like direct thoughts and her narration. So this opens with Kagura's thoughts. She remembers Kyo saying, there's something I wanted to tell you from the last chapter that we just read. You know, actually, there was something I had to tell you, she thinks. She remembers Tohru running after him when Tohru found out about his true form. On that day, I understood the real reason why I called out to you, Kyo-kun. We see a memory from the past of baby Kyo and baby Kagura, which happens a lot in this chapter also. And then we see them in what looks like in middle school, or like maybe a little bit younger in high school, and Kagura's narration continues, the first reason I started loving you, Kyo-kun. In the present, Kyo and Kagura meet for their date. She calls him over as he arrives and says that she got there like 30 minutes early, and then she sasses him and says that he's not excited enough, and he's like, you're too excited. She thinks the only reason we're here today is because I have threatened him, sort of dejectedly. He asks her if she decided what they'll do on their date, and she thought at first a movie, but he's not really into them. You still don't watch TV or anything, do you? Kagura asks, because if you did, there's no one who would get mad at you anymore. It's not that, Kyo says, looking away. And it's really interesting because, like, this whole conversation, like, most of the time he spends with her, he doesn't look directly at her, especially at this point. Kagura is surprised that Kyo doesn't shout at her. Not that long ago, he would have lost his temper at her and been like, it's none of your business. But that's right, Kyo-kun wasn't always so short-tempered, was he? She thinks. Well, let's go, she says and grabs his hand. We transition back to the past, to Kagura's memory of Kyo when they were young. Baby Kyo draws in the dirt. I think Baby Kyo drawing in the dirt is very charming.
Baby Kyo and Baby Kagura are both really adorable.
They are. There's the way that Takaya draws them is really, really adorable. I don't know what it is about it. I think they're also just really young. Like, I don't think we've seen any kids in this series this young. Like, I think they're even younger than like Baby Tohru in the hat, all the boy with the hat scenes.
Yeah.
Like, just thinking about it, I don't know if we've ever seen a kid, maybe a little, not even, because Kyo is like older than this in the scenes when his like from the funeral and stuff like that. So I don't know. Anyway, but yes, they're very cute. Kagura introduces herself to Kyo, and Kyo immediately tries to run away, but baby Kagura like grabs him by the leg and drags him backwards. Kyo says that his mom says he shouldn't talk to strangers, and she's like, she won't get mad. I'm like you. I'm in the zodiac. I'm the boar. And Kagura tries to ask things about Kyo, like, hey, what are you drawing? Fried eggs? Do you like fried eggs? Do you always play by yourself? Don't you have any friends? And she looks over at him, and he hasn't responded yet, and she says, what else do you like, Kyo-chan? What's your favorite TV show? I don't watch TV, he says. Mom says it's full of bad things. She gets mad when I watch it. Kagura stands, and he remains drawing fried eggs in the dirt. Say, she says, want me to play with you? Kyo looks up with genuine surprise and gratitude. Really? He says, and Kagura smiles a small smile and then grabs his arm and pulls him up. Yeah, she says, starting today, I'll always be by your side. She remembers him smiling and in the present thinks, Kyo-kun, I'm terrible, aren't I? Kyo realizes that she's brought them to a place from their childhood, which looks like a park that maybe overlooks the town. Like, you can see houses in the background, including the Soma estate. There's some kids playing nearby. Maybe it's painful for you to be here, Kyo-kun, she says, since the main house is right over there. And it's a place where I first saw your true form. Kagura remembers that time as a child. She tugs at his bracelet. There's a scene where she's kind of like fighting with him, like, give me your bracelet, and she tugs it off of his wrist. You didn't want me to, but I forced you, she thinks. And we see Kyo transform into what looks like a smaller version of the true form. Baby Kagura's eyes widen and she screams and runs away. In the present, she says, after that, your mom would let you out less, didn't she? And you started to avoid me. From that moment on, you would keep your distance. But I mean, that wasn't it, she says, out loud to him in the present, and thinks, I was the one who started distancing myself first. Kyokun, she says, you know, I was sad that I was born possessed by a vengeful spirit. After all, when I was young, my parents often fought because of me. Whenever I saw Mama crying by herself afterwards, it made me really sad. Back then, I hated myself so much I couldn't stand it. Kagura, with the kind of like dead-eyed look that we've seen several times, specifically from Kisa's mom and Uo, and Hana in her kind of backstory chapter, Kagura adds, I thought I was the worst person on earth. But then on the day I met Yukio-kun, I was happy. I was relieved. We see Kagura's face in her memory of meeting Kyo. So like in the memory that we saw before of her meeting Kyo, we just saw her hair kind of hangs in front of her face. This time when she remembers it, we can see her face. Her eyes gleam as she stands over him. I realized that compared to the cat, I had it easy, she says in the present, and Kyo kind of grimaces a little. Compared to a kid who drew fried eggs in the dirt all by himself, I wasn't so bad after all. I wasn't pitied and I wasn't ostracized. Not like this boy. I realized I could feel good about myself, Kagura says. That's why I was with you. I was always looking down on you, Kyo-kun. Kyo frowns, and Kagura looks down at the ground, eyes wide. We see Kagura thinking, kind of her hands up to her face, outlined against a dark background. It's terrible, isn't it? I feel so dirty. The day I ran away from you, I was afraid with all my heart. The part of me seemed dirty, so dirty that I couldn't stand it. I hated it. I wanted to do it over again. I wanted you to forget it ever happened. I didn't even realize how dirty that thought itself was. Kagura says to Kyo, who faces away from her, I thought that if I could like you, Kyo-kun, if I could shorten the distance between us, and if you would like me back, then the me that ran away, the dirty me, would be washed away. That's what I believed. Yeah, so Kagura remembers Rin telling her to give up on this like act of forcing herself on Kyo before leaving for the beach a few chapters ago, and Kagura starts to cry. It was a forced love, she thinks. She remembers Tohru running after Kyo again when his true form was revealed. But then, when I saw her chasing after you, I realized how foolish that was. I was blind to your pain. I never thought about your needs. Yes, in the end, it was all about myself. Kagura holds her head in her hands. I never thought about the feelings that I must have hurt after I deserted you, Kyo-kun. All this time, I was only chasing after you for myself. I'm sorry, she says as she cries. I'm sorry, Kyo-kun, I'm sorry. Kagura opens her eyes and sees his feet kind of on the ground in front of her and looks up. I know this is painful for you, Kyo says, to say those things on my behalf. Kagura, I won't like you. I'll never like you. I just wanted to tell you that. Looking down on me, using me, it doesn't matter. There's nothing for you to apologize for. Kagura suddenly stands and kind of like acts like she's trying to shake it off, and she's like, but I wanted to say my confession, and she stretches and adds, I'm glad I could say it. I feel better. You don't have to be so nice, she thinks. Either way, I knew it was hopeless. Kagura remembers running away from Kyo in his true form again as a child. At that time, part of me knew that I'd never be able to truly get close to you. But I still tried to convince myself that I could close the space between us, Kyo-kun, she thinks, smiling ruefully. How would you react if I told you that somewhere in my heart I'd given up? Would you cry from relief? I guess you would. Kagura, regardless of what your reason was, when you played with me, I was happy. Thank you, Kyo says. Kagura stops in her tracks. The kids who are playing nearby run past her. The girl announces that she's heading home, and another kid is like, oh, Ne-chan, wait. Wait, Kagura thinks, remembering Kyo calling her Kagura Ne-chan as a kid. It certainly was a love that started out forced. But the Kyo-kun who called me by name, the awkward innocent Kyo-kun, before I knew it, there was a part of me that chased after him because I wanted to. Kagura starts to cry again and turns. Kyo-chan, she shouts. Kyo-chan. He turns toward her. Kyo-chan, I do love you. I love you, she shouts, tears pouring out of her eyes. Believe me, she thinks. Kyo comes over and hugs her, putting his hand on her head. Thank you, he says again. Thank you. And we see a sweet scene of Kyo and Kagura as kids sitting under a sunflower. Kagura reads to Kyo. And then we transition to later that night. Kagura returns home, and her mom asks what happened. Kagura thanks her for worrying about her. I'm sorry, I don't need pity, she thinks. And she goes to her room and sits on her bed amongst the many, kitty-shaped plushies that she has. I don't expect anyone to understand these feelings. Feelings of pain, feelings of happiness. They're mine alone. Just like the Kyokun from back then is mine alone. Kagura cries again and thinks, unlike me, he didn't say I'm sorry. He said thank you. Oh, Kyokun, you stayed with me until I stopped crying. Just you, Kyokun. Be mine alone, at least until this night is over. And that's the end of chapter 68. What an emotional roller coaster ride these two chapters were.
Yeah.
There's crying, and there's I don't know, so many feelings. Would you like to kick off this discussion?
Should we go in chronological order and start with Tohru and Kazuma?
Yeah, I think so.
So I think a lot of the stuff isn't really new to us. That is said between them.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
But I think the most interesting part about it for me is getting Kazuma's perspective on everything, because he's not really inside or outside.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I think his view, especially on Aikido, is one of the more interesting things. I remember finding that interesting the first time I read through, where he says he's not afraid of Aikido. He doesn't find Aikido intimidating or anything the way the others do, because it's just a completely different situation for the ones that are in the Zodiac.
And also he's older than them. He describes Aikido as a child.
Yeah.
And even people like Shigure, who are obviously older than Aikido, don't describe Aikido that way. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that there's at least one person who thinks of Aikido as acting like a child. Yeah. I think that's the first time we had this kind of perspective.
Yeah, because Aikido is this vision of absolute power and terror to pretty much everyone we've seen so far. And so to have Kazuma just being yeah, I'm not afraid of Aikido. Aikido's just a kid throwing a tantrum, but
an extremely violent tantrum.
Yeah. But for everyone else, everything's just amplified from Aikido to the Zodiac members.
I think I guess we could kind of even add that to our things about the curse that we're tracking, which is they get more into this discussion about this bond that defines the curse in a second, but even at the outset, you could say that not only does Aikido play this kind of role of God in the Zodiac, there's also this special relationship that Aikido has, which we've seen. I think we've seen it played out, but we haven't had anybody kind of describe that it's the relationship that Aikido has with people in Zodiac is different than just any other person.
Yeah, it seems to be almost a physical thing.
Yeah, it causes them more pain, he says, than other people.
Yeah.
Also, in that scene, so we've seen Aikido. We've also been presented with Aikido as someone who's someone to fear, right? The narrative that we see is almost from the perspective of the Zodiac, where we see Aikido being physically abusive, and Aikido is drawn in a scary way. We've talked about it a lot of times, how just how impactful the style in which Aikido is drawn, and then in these scenes. In this scene, there's these two kind of injected images of Aikido that are shown during the narrative, and both of them you can kind of see are really they show the first one doesn't necessarily show Aikido in kind of this sort of weak position, but I think the second one does, because Aikido is shown kind of inside, kind of secluded away, and then also the style of Aikido's clothes is always disheveled. We've seen that a lot. And they're extra. I feel they actually look even more disheveled than normal in these two photos. I don't know, it seems to be increasing, whatever Aikido's kind of weakness or mental instability is actually increased. So
yeah, and we talked a bit during the beach arc how we started to see a little bit more of Aikido being almost vulnerable or fragile. Which is kind of the first we've seen of that, and so this kind of continues on with that a bit.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's actually building on that. Yeah, we've seen specifically this bird imagery of a bird with Aikido before, and now in this scene the bird is dead. I was like, what the fuck is this in the middle of this one scene? I don't have a specific thing to interpret about it. right now, but I thought it was, and it's like it implied because of the way that it's drawn. I feel like that Akito did something to like injure the bird or kill the bird.
Yeah. And it seems like really casual. Like
Yeah, Akito
Akito's
doesn't
just
seem
kind
to
of
care.
lean in there. Yeah. It kind of made me think of like, the kind of. I mean, it's true to some extent, but the stereotype of like serial killers starting out by killing small animals when they're younger.
Yeah, that's true.
Just that imagery kind of made me think of that. So.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, and I feel like every time there's like a movie where it's like some kind of horror movie or about some kind of killer or whatever, if there's a bird, it's gonna die. Like,
yeah, I know.
every time I watch some kind of horror movie and there's a bird, I'm like, oh, what's gonna happen to the bird?
No.
It's always gonna be something.
Even in Harry Potter, I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, there's just general kind of like bird symbolism. Birds are fragile creatures often kept in cages, and there's a Akito with a dead bird.
/ in a cage, yes.
Yeah.
Basically.
So, yeah, compared to all the, people who are Akito's their master, so.
Yeah, there's kind of an interesting contrast when you mention it like that.
Yeah.
Akito's the one in the cage, even though Akito is supposedly in control of them. Physically, at least, Akito's kind of separated. This is, I can't tell if this is like kind of like classic, the way that Akito's represented, or if it is like building on, I think it is kind of building on like sort of like secluded imagery, and also, or not imagery, but kind of like, I don't know.
I think it definitely builds on the fragility, because we have that scene of Akito, like, I think that first scene of Akito is fairly classic Akito, just like, lounging with the dead bird.
Yeah, no big deal.
But then the next panel he's got kind of he's closed his eyes and has this kind of pained expression.
Yeah,
it looks like.
It does look like that to me.
Yeah, and then like the later one where, like you said, he's like in the window, he looks really very small, and then also has kind of I don't know how to describe it, but a unhappy expression in the next panel there too. Like,
yeah, it does look sort of. It's like beyond unhappy. It's beyond just unhappy. I don't know what word you would use to describe it, but it's, I don't know, disenfranchised, but not necessarily.
Look at my life, look at my choices.
Yeah, basically.
But not just a typical like maniac Akito kind of anger expression or anything.
No.
Like,
even earlier,
it's a more
and not threatening,
sad, pensive kind of expression.
They both are. Even the casual like dead bird one is a bit more pensive, I feel like.
Yeah.
And pained, as you said, and this one also, is more, look at my life, look at my choices. But it's funny because like recently, I guess Akito used all of his energy like harassing everybody at the beach, because most of the stuff that we've seen recently has been like very threatening. Even like that really.
Well, he was talking about even before like going to harass everyone at the beach. It's like, I'm tired, I'm sick, I don't feel good.
Yeah.
Like, so I could see it being like, after all that, probably doesn't feel much better.
No, I seriously doubt it. There's a little line that Shishou is like, it doesn't matter if, I don't think I even said it when I was going through it, but it's like, it doesn't matter if he's, like weak or strong, like his words impact them more than other people. Like, it's kind of in that, it's phrased in that way.
Yeah, and I think we talked about that before, how like Akito is like physically a pretty like small and fragile presence, but still manages to be so intimidating.
There's more to their conversation. That's just one part. That's like the first half of their conversation.
Yeah, and then we get into kind of like the bond talk in general.
The bond talk. It's an interesting. So Shishou kind of describes it as a bond, a blood bond that they have, and then Tohru is the one who kind of makes this connection, I guess, on her own. That's kind of like, so the bond is the curse? Question mark. Yeah. The great thesis statement of the of the story, perhaps. The other interesting thing about that part is that she says like a bond is something sacred, and then like I deserve to be punished for wanting to break it, and she thinks about her mother. So we've obviously seen a lot of her throughout the story, thinking of her mother at kind of a lot of key points. This one is like, it's interesting. We haven't seen her really. So the last time I think she's had kind of like thoughts, negative or positive, about her mother was at the beach.
Yeah.
In that moment where she's like awake at night thinking about her mother and I guess the relationship they have. And now here her mother crops up again in this point where she's thinking about the importance of a bond, how sacred a bond is. So it's kind of interesting. I guess it's like a contrast, or like a, I don't know, like a comparison to like, I wonder why that would be inserted. Takaya would choose to insert it there. It's obviously some, like, functionally in the story, I guess it's something where that's what Tohru thinks of when she thinks of a strong bond.
Yeah.
But also, I guess then it's her relationship with her mother is kind of like thematically then linked to the bond that comes from the Soma curse. Question mark.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just posing that as a potential, I guess.
Yeah. I think there's definitely a theme of like different kinds of bonds, positive and negative, in the series. So
Definitely.
like kind of comparing them. So.
In these 2 chapters, we get some comparisons of different relationships. And I was kind of, a lot of it is on Toru's relationship with Kyo versus Kagura's. But then there are some others that are sprinkled in here, like this one, of Toru's kind of relationship with her mom.
Yeah. I also like the, like she has that one panel memory of Momiji saying, because that's the curse, which is, I believe, from when he was telling Hattori's story. And it's, I think at the end when he's saying that like all this stuff happened, but Hattori
Never
wouldn't blame
blamed
Akito.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she asks why, and he says because that's the curse, and which kind of this makes it more clear. It's like that bond to Akito is, what was going on there, and like why he couldn't blame Akito, and why that's the curse that's hurting them all.
Yeah, we finally have additional, like, I mean, I think it's been communicated through the things that have happened, but this is like kind of wrapping all those 2 things, like wrapping that up, like
yeah. Like it's obviously like Tohru and probably us to some degree, like putting all the little pieces together to be like, this is what the whole situation is.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. The situation is like the reason that nobody can defy Keto is not because of the physical control, or not because of the like not just because of the emotional abuse, and not just because of their just like familial relationship or the hierarchy in the family. It's additionally and mostly because of the curse itself and the bond they have.
Yeah, it's like the indescribable otherworldly connection.
Oh, I have an interesting something that was interesting about Toru and Shishou's conversation specifically to me, which is how tense. I think like Takaya does a good job illustrating how tense their discussion is by the shading that's used, and also like their body language. So like you can see they sit very like stiff. Toru bows her head. These are things that Shishou comments on. And then after that kind of discussion, Toru's like, when they serve the tea, Toru's like, oh, Kyo's getting bigger, do you think he's getting stronger? And then they are kind of back to their like normal relationship, which I think is really interesting. The way that Toru treats asking him about the curse, she treats it very sensitively. Then you see like Rin come in, and she's like, what the fuck was Toru doing here, or whatever.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting how Toru like acts like she's making a huge imposition on him just by asking these questions. Like she keeps being like saying, please tell me, and if you tell me anything, I'll like want to ask anything of you again, and that kind of stuff. Like, yeah.
She says something like, like, oh, forgive me for imposing on you this request and stuff like that. I can't remember exactly what it is.
Yeah, and then Cosmo's reaction is like, you're trying to do everyone a huge favor. Why are you acting so humble about it, basically? Like,
yeah.
But yeah, I do like the first page of the chapter.
Me too.
Just how that's framed, where it's got like the shading of them and like facing opposite directions with the panel in between of the like wide shot of them sitting.
And they're sitting so far apart, you can see like how their hands are kind of clenched and stuff. Like, and yeah, the shading, this like the structure where like she's on the left and he's on the right is really interesting. I took note of that, and I was like, this is nice. Just like that's the panel, page of like Yuki, the one where he was like walking to school with before meeting student council. It struck me as being similar. It's something that's given a lot of space, especially in like most of this chapter is just this dialogue. So how it's an interesting choice or like it would be, I imagine it would be interesting to be like, what do you actually choose to show when they kick off this conversation? In the like, how do you illustrate it? And I think it's a nice choice. It comes together nicely.
It's a very dialogue heavy chapter, so having that kind of like room to breathe in that first page is really nice.
always Takaya has these expressions that are extremely difficult to describe. There's a bunch of them in this in this chapter. You should just read it. Why are you listening to us? No. But like,
they're listening because we're great.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely. But there's like there's like varying levels of surprise and varying levels of dismay and varying levels of like happiness and like concern is very interesting this time too.
Yeah.
Try to describe them simply, but there's a lot of different. They have really all of the characters in these chapters have really interesting facial expressions. Even Rin, with her like 3-second appearance, has these really interesting sort of concerned and determined expressions at the end, I guess.
Yeah. Should we talk about Rin?
Yeah, let's do it. Do you want to talk about Kyo first, or do you want to? We can just save that all for that. They are all kind of tied together.
Yeah, I think that'd be best grouped together.
Okay. Yeah, let's talk about Rin. Rin. I was like, yay, Rin's back. And then she just like, I love how she just like completely walks past Tohru and completely ignores everything that she tries to say.
Yeah.
And then she's like, stop hanging around Somas. And then leaves.
Poor what's his name trying to get her to take off her shoes. Yeah, that's
hey, wait. It's also like so taboo. Don't walk across the like tatami floor with your shoes on. How dare?
Yeah, and then like picks up her bag after her.
He's like, oh, she keeps leaving her stuff everywhere. Yeah, it's really funny. He's like typical. So it's kind of funny, or like same as always. He says. So I guess maybe she comes over to Shishou's a lot. I don't know.
Yeah, you get the impression that she's been here before more than once.
Definitely.
So, both from that and from the conversation with Kazuma.
Yeah, Kazuma actually says she came to ask the same question that you did. So it implies that at least they've had one conversation before.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that it's more than that.
He's kind of a little bit sarcastic toward her, which is kind of funny from Kazuma.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of a Shigure thing to say. He's like, what's the matter? You're scowling at me.
I was let a guess today. Why are you scowling at me?
Yeah, it's so great. It's kind of funny because like he definitely isn't normally like that. Like he's normally so like whenever Kyo and Tohru are there, he's like, oh, like so charming, like such a dad type. And then when Rin comes, he's like such an asshole. Like it's kind of funny.
Yeah. I think it also implies some like familiarity between them, like which helps to, imply that like she's come around before. Like he's obviously fairly casual with her compared to like people he doesn't know as well, like Tohru.
And he also Tohru's very formal too. And also like with Kyo, I think he's like trying to they have it's established that they have a sort of a strange relationship. Like they're close, but I think they both are still like we saw the time where he visited with Tohru, the infamous hand touching chapter a couple chapters ago. And even then he's like Kyo is like, why are you cooking and reading books and stuff like that? But like even in the moments where they have like a discussion, like Shishou's never like sarcastic or anything. Like he doesn't really like tease Kyo. He's very like he treats Kyo very delicately. Yeah. With Rin he's like
it seems like yeah, and like we know like Kyo and Kazuma, at least in the recent years, have been kind of strained because they both felt like they didn't want to push the other too far, basically. Yeah. And like assuming the strength of their relationship, and like they're getting a little bit more like casual and teasy with each other now. For sure. So.
Yeah, especially now that Kyo brought Tohru there.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course with Tohru he's going to be more formal because she is, and also like just and proper. Yeah. I don't what's the word I'm looking, just like social behavior, I guess. The expected behavior.
Yeah. They've only met a handful of times before this.
That's true. And only one time he like forced his son. Only one time he caused his son to transform into a horrible monster in front of her. No big deal. Yeah. It's okay.
You gotta build up to casual conversation after that.
It's hard to look someone in the eye after that. I mean. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, I don't know. There's something, I don't know exactly what it is. Sorry. It's not about Rin. I just wanted to say again that, yeah, their conversation is so tense. They don't even they barely look at each other in the face. Really interesting. Until the casual discussion at the end. And I just think it's well captured. And then, the contrast of Rin coming in, busting in, being like, what's that girl doing here? And I think we get, I think we've seen Rin's...
we've had her conversation with Shigure. Yep.
Her sexy conversation.
Where he's like, I don't know why you think I'll know. And all this kind of stuff was all vague and mysterious and sexy.
Yes, sexy and mysterious. Yeah, it was vague. it was like, what is she doing? Why is she sneaking around? And then she went to the beach, which was like, why did she go to the beach? We'll never know.
Yeah.
She just showed up to transform and then disappear, basically.
Yeah. But yeah, so now we have kind of an idea of what her mysterious goal was. It's at least related to the curse, since breaking it, since Cosmos is like, she came to ask the same questions you did.
Yeah, I think it's strongly implied that it's something related to that. And then she says, I won't let her get involved, which is kind of interesting about Tohru.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tell exactly at this point what Rin's motivation is. She seems to be similarly driven, but she's so anti-Tohru, everything about her, and wants her to kind of stay away.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to tell why that is at this point.
Yeah, she's definitely trying to drive Tohru away, but it's not clear why. Like,
but it's nice to see her again.
It's nice to see her not, passing out.
Yes. Toru's like, are you well? You don't look as pale as before, or whatever. It's like, oh dear. I guess before we go on to all the Kyo and Kagura stuff, there is a little scene with like Yuki and Tohru, or like Yuki and Shigure, like at Shigure's house. And as we kind of pointed out during the summary, like, it's not, Kyo sits with them. It's this like one of those things where it seems like the same kind of gag, but then there's these little things that are revealed in it that I think show how the characters are developing. So Shigure is kind of the same. He makes the same joke as always, but like Yuki and Kyo, they have this kind of non-fight where Yuki just kind of acts like he's being dumb because he is being dumb, and then Kyo is like, it's your job, and it's funny.
But it's funny, they're like, Yuki's picking on him, but he's like obviously trying to encourage him to be like, it's like, why don't you pick up Tohru for work sometimes? I'm sure she would enjoy that.
Yes, hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, that's what you do.
And then it's just like,
you're an idiot. Yeah, exactly.
It's like, why do I bother?
Yeah, I know. Don't bother Yuki. He'll never get it. I mean, but yeah, it's very charming.
But then I have a little bit of like you're saying about them, like kind of agreeing at the end, like against Shigure's like humor or whatever.
Yes.
Because like Yuki's like, I've heard enough of your pervy comebacks, and you have a tiny bubble that's probably from Kyo. This is me too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's always Kyo and Yuki versus Shigure.
Yeah.
Kyo versus Yuki, but Kyo and Yuki versus Shigure. And and then the little scene of them sitting at the table I find to be really sweet too, where we talked about Kyo, but then Yuki's also like pushing Shigure's newspaper down, and smiling. It's very funny. It's all very charming. So
yeah, it's a very dynamic little panel.
Yeah, it is.
It, like, shows relationships well, and just a glimpse there, so it's cute.
And you also have Cosmo kind of like staring off into the distance with his final closing thoughts before that. But I think it's interesting that like so the story is mostly told from Toru's point of view. There's like some things like the next chapter, which is like mostly Kagura's, or like somewhere we've had like Uo's backstory or Hana's, where it kind of follows the same format, where it's like a lot of memories that are narrated by the character. But the things that unfold in the present tend to mostly unfold from Toru's point of view. So it's kind of interesting to get another perspective on Tohru, which is Shishou's this time. So he says, you should just continue to smile for them. That's a thing that you can do that helps them. Form new bonds with them. And he says, like, you don't even know, you don't see it in yourself what you give to everyone, the gift that pours out from your heart. That's kind of like nice to wrap up this little part of this chapter. So
and to go back a tiny bit, I think Toru's reaction to the like repeated be yourself kind of stuff she's gotten is kind of interesting.
It is interesting. It's funny because it's kind of like, well, first of all, I remembered all of these times, so it's so Tohru, what happens is, what we're talking about is Tohru has this she's leaving Shishou's, and she remembers what he said, which is, he says for you to be yourself is important, and then she has these memories, one of her mother, one of Shigure, and then one of Yuki, and then Kyo, mostly focused on the one of Kyo. And of course, like, the one of her mother is what she remembers at the very beginning of the series. The one from Yuki is also at the very beginning, where she's like, what are the rules of the house or whatever? I can't remember exactly what she asks him, and Yuki is like, just be yourself, you'll be fine. And then when she leaves the Soma estate, the one where Shigure says it is, I think, when she's leaving, the same chapter we just talked about with Momiji, the one where she sees Akito for the first time, the one where she learns about Tohru's backstory. she asks Shigure, is there anything I need to do about the curse, or like, is there anything I can do? And he says, just be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one of Kyo is when she's sick, and he's like, you need to get back to the way that you normally are, or like, I won't know what to do. I can't remember exactly what he says. It's a sentence that trails off. So it's the same kind of situation. But yeah, it's an interesting scene. It's kind of like, I feel like she's like processing all of those things, like, be myself. What does it mean to be myself? Like,
yeah, I think maybe it seems like she might be like feeling the pressure from that, because it's like she's like, I keep asking what I can do, and people keep telling me to be myself. Like, what do I have to do? Like,
yeah. It's like, I was thinking about it too. It's like, what does be yourself mean? What does it mean? Like doing,
yeah,
there's like, I feel like she's trying to pursue an action, and it feels like being yourself isn't an action.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah, I think she's trying to find something like proactive to do. And I was telling her,
just be there.
The implications, like just being there and supporting everyone, and helping them break their molds and everything, is more help than she knows. But I don't think she's quite gotten to that point of realizing that. So
I think so. I agree with you. She's very focused on.
So she's
that.
So she's just like, what the heck am I supposed to do?
No one can tell me what to do. They just keep telling me to be myself.
Yeah.
That's how I would say it. That's how Tohru would say it.
Yeah.
But as if there's a thing that can be done. But I guess at this point she realizes that it's kind of the bond that holds them all together. But she hasn't put two and two together, that like being someone who can be supportive and like kind of the way that Shishou phrases it when he's thinking like you can be a support for Kyo and form a new bond with him, if she can be someone who can
give them something outside of
the bonds they have, this like
the
forced
bond with
bond they have,
yeah,
then that would be better. That would be something she could do. But I think the story for her, the idea is still building. So.
Yeah.
And then the scene is also interesting because it transitions into this like a heavily Kyo focused idea. So. And
there's also, I didn't really think of it until just this moment, and probably elaborate on it later, but kind of a connection of like forced love.
There is. I'm thinking of calling this episode a forced love. It was a forced love.
Yeah.
It's on my list of potential quote names that I already made. But yeah, perhaps, because that's also what basically the topic of the next chapter is too. And with that segue, now we can talk about the next chapter.
Yeah.
Unless there's something else you wanted to talk about in this one.
No, I think that's
everything.
Everything.
Okay. So yeah, Kagura and Kyo.
It's a good chapter for Kagura.
It was. Kagura's like, there's a lot of characters in Fruits Basket who don't get a lot of details in their backstory, and in fact some of them are actually like, if you have an older version, like if you have the luxury of having a Tokyo Pop version, in this chapter that we read, there's a bunch of like side panels of information. They're like author's notes about different characters who don't get a lot of attention, like Shigure's editor Michan, for example.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's nice that we get more detail about Kagura.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps to fill her out as a character rather than be mostly kind of a one-note gag character.
Yes. So. And her mom also kept her home from the beach arc, where everybody else was having their growth. So now we need to have some Kagura growth, I guess.
Yeah. Also, like, tiny isolated baby Kyo is just even sadder than like
so sad.
we've ever seen. Like,
it's so sad. Yeah, I was reading it. I forgot the details from this, so I was like, there's the scene. There's like, so they meet for the date. So what happens in the chapter is first Kagura sees Kyo, and then he tries to tell her that he's not interested in her, and she's like, I won't listen to you unless we go on a date. So she does the thing that she tends to do, where she kind of like bullies him into doing something and broke the fence, which she also tends to do. And then the next one, when they go on this date, is basically like a series of her talking to him in the present, and then these memories from the past. And the first thing she says is like, oh, I was thinking of going to a movie, but then I remember that you don't like them. And then she asks if he watches movies, and is like, but nobody's around to get mad at you anymore if you watch TV. And I was like, no. And then in the next scene, it goes into this memory where Kyo is like pitifully drawing fried eggs in the dirt, and baby Kagura comes in and is like, what are the things that you like? Do you like fried eggs? Is that why you're drawing them? What TV do you like? Like a normal kid would ask another normal kid, and he's like, Mom doesn't let me watch TV. She says there's like bad stuff on TV or whatever. she gets mad when I watch TV. I was like, no,
Mm-hmm.
no
Yeah.
trains, no TV.
Yeah.
Poor Kyo.
And, like, we've seen, like, that he's ostracized and hasn't been allowed, much social experience when he
Clearly.
was younger. But this is, like, the youngest we see him. And it's just, like, even before everything went, like, way, way bad,
Yes.
it's like he wasn't allowed to play with anybody. He wasn't allowed to watch TV.
Yes.
To the point where, like, the second someone starts to talk to him, he just runs away.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, so sad. Yes, she talks to him and then he tries to run away and she's like, it's fine. You can talk to me. I'm just like you. Yeah, and it was so sad
yeah.
also to see that.
Yeah. And we kind of get more of, like, but, like, we've had the idea of the cat as kind of a
I
scapegoat
think so.
so far. And we see, like, even someone as young as Kagura is, like, kind of thinking that, even if not, like, explicitly. Like, I don't think she's explicitly deviously as a, like, 5-year-old or whatever thinking, like, oh,
Yeah. No.
well, I have it better than him. Like, it's just in her mind.
I mean, like, I think what happens is that she's, like, reflected on it. So what happens structurally in the chapter is, like, you see the first memory and it's, like, pretty normal. I still think the scene where she's kind of standing over him and is like, want me to play with you, kind of creeps me out a little bit. It has this Aikido-like quality.
Yeah. Well, we got this, I think those skinny panels on the page before that has the, like, her face looking down on him, and we got some nice black feathers.
Yes. Yes, we do.
Floating across the panels there.
Like, I didn't say that it was, like, I didn't propose that this was a thing or anything, but black feathers, guys.
Yeah. I do have a note that just says feathers.
There's a lot, because there's white feathers when Kyo's thinking about, when Tohru was thinking about Kyo in the other chapter, or, like, in the... Yeah, thinking about, it's, like, not specifically about Kyo, but it's the transition between her thinking about what does it mean for her to be herself, and then seeing Rin.
Yeah.
But yeah, black feathers.
But yeah, those couple of panels are a little ominous even before we get the full, like, kind of reveal of, like, why Kagura decided to try and befriend him as a child.
Yeah. The one that creeps me out the most is the one, so Kyo looks up with this super, like, earnest face that's drawn super big, and there's one on the, like, left-hand side of the page where she's just, like, smiling, and that one is the one that creeps me out the most. I don't know what specifically. I mean, you just see this, like, grin.
Yeah, it looks a little, like, a little calculating for someone so young. Like...
But I think it's her. I think that she didn't actually think that as a child. I mean, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it was any kind of conscious, like, set of thoughts at that age. It was just, like, she's talking about how, like, she like, hated herself as a child because she felt like it was her fault that all this, bad stuff was happening in her family because she was born cursed.
Yeah. And she's like, at least I don't, like, play with myself, or, like, at least, I don't know.
Yeah.
At least, I think what it is, like, probably when she was a kid, she felt good about being around Kyo. And then her, like, growing up has enabled her to look back on those memories and be like, I chose to spend time with him because I felt better around him because he was in such a worse off kind of position. So that's then represented in her retelling of these memories, reliving these memories, right?
Yeah. And she probably felt like that kind of, like, oh, I'm being generous, I'm playing with this kid who's all alone kind of thing. And then, like, reframing it as an adult, she realizes, like, oh, that wasn't, like, a positive feeling.
No, she realizes that it was all to satisfy herself. Specifically when she goes into the memory of running away from him in his true form. That, I guess, like you said, she felt like she was doing a good thing by spending time with him, but she couldn't overcome, like, the feeling of fear. Like, she couldn't be a genuinely good friend to him, I guess, is, like, what she means when she says she felt dirty or whatever.
Yeah. I really like the part where she says, like, she said she wanted to do it over again and to become, like, the better person who could accept him, and then, like, realizing, like, that wasn't a positive thought either. Like,
because it's not about,
like, she was thinking, like, because it's not about, like, being a better person and better friend to Kyo. It's about just being a person who, like, she didn't feel shitty a bad
about.
person
Yeah,
about.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, it was all her whole motivation was selfish, she feels, the whole time.
Yeah, it was like, I want to feel better about myself rather than I want to do better.
I want to be a better friend for
Kyo.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. Which is so interesting. Such a, like, such a, like, self-aware thing to think.
Yeah.
To look back at something so many times, to look at the same memory so many times and then say, like, the actual thing that was happening was that I felt like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting to me.
Yeah, and it's such a, like, it's a very realistic set of emotions.
Definitely.
Like, Like, people definitely do things that they tell themselves are good things just because they want to feel good about it rather than, like, just do a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. And I think especially when you're a kid too, like,
Yeah.
I think kids do, well, kids aren't as, I mean, like, I don't know, a lot of adults aren't aware of what is motivating them to
Yeah.
do things, but kids especially aren't aware of what's motivating them to take certain actions, right? So she's like, I'm friends with Kyo
Yeah.
because I'm being nice to him, but yeah, because it makes her feel a certain way to be with him.
Yeah. But I also like at the end where Kyo, like, tells her, like,
It didn't
he was
matter.
happy when they played together as kids. Like,
Yes.
even if he knows now it was a less altruistic thing, he was still happy. It made his childhood a little bit better. Like,
For sure. I think that's also really touching and also true, or like a realistic feeling, I'm sure.
yeah.
The other interesting thing about then the chapter takes this turn where then Kagura is like, somewhere I realized I did start like loving you for the person that you are. I did start going after. I did start. I can't remember exactly what she says, but she's like, I started pursuing you because I liked you for who you were.
Yeah.
And then sort of like confesses her feelings truly. It's an interesting like. So we have this. This is a character we know is supposedly has feelings for Kyo, right? Like it's been established pretty early on that she shows up and she demands to have time be spent with her and stuff like that. Like it's seen as it's presented as her having romantic feelings for him, and then there's still a dramatic confession from her, which is really interesting to me. It's like so such a weird thing to have, like, but she was already in love with him and she's saying it again, but it's, I guess, like, to her it's more of a like her true feelings. She felt like she expressed what her true feelings are, but that was more like about her past, and so then she says how she feels again.
Yeah. And it kind of feels like she herself didn't realize until this moment that, like, she really is in love with him. Like,
Yeah.
I
knew that all of this chapter was coming, but I didn't think that I would feel the way that I feel about it, which is how interesting it is. Like, my recollection of this chapter is like the first thing that we discussed, not the thing we just talked about just now, where it's like my like recollection was like, well, Kagura was friends with Kyo because she pitied him, but it's like beyond that. I think it's interesting that you pointed out that, like, I'm sure that these memories that she has are being exaggerated, right? Like it's it's exaggerated to communicate how she feels about them, not what actually happened.
Yeah. And, like, Kyo says, like, it made him happy, and we see lots of little glimpses of them together as kids, and they do seem like they're genuinely having a good time and being happy together.
Just being like regular kids. Like her.
There's a really cute one, like, right after she's talking about, like, oh, I have it easy compared to the cat. There's a really cute thing of them, like, hugging, it's a really adorable little panel.
I like the one where at the very end of the scene with Kyo, he's they're sitting under like the flowers and reading together. It's really sweet.
Yeah, and it is like, she says, like, Kyo wasn't always so short-tempered, and has, like, a thing at the end where she says, like, the Kyo from back then is like mine alone, and it's like, we really haven't seen Kyo like this before. Like,
we haven't seen him. We've only seen him short-tempered because even in the earliest flashback that we have of him, which is at the funeral probably, we saw how angry he was. So this is like pre that Kyo.
But he's
almost.
and he's just like this sweet, affectionate little boy, like
a poor little child who's never seen a train and doesn't watch TV. Yeah. And he's so genuine. His expressions in this, like the way that Takaya draws his expressions, are so like genuinely happy and so like genuine and innocent. The way that Kagura describes him as being like innocent, my like innocent Kyo, it's very. I think it's true. I think it comes across well, and he's always been portrayed like that too. Like even in the times that we saw before, when he wasn't being angry, he was like, I don't know. He kind of has this like boyish innocence to his character that's always kind of been there. But the kind of like anger on top of that, as a layer on top of that, that's since been It's like he was kind of like that, and now not so much. She clearly points out that she's like, oh, he would have been so short-tempered with me before, but now he's not.
Yeah, he's becoming a more gentle and affectionate person again. Obviously, not to that degree, but
but more also just more mature, like recognizing that she, like Kyo doesn't want to go on this date with her. He doesn't want to like, enable her to have this time, but he does it. Like he takes the time to sit with her, and waits until she finishes crying and lets her express all the things that she wants to express, and physically comforts her. It's really genuine and
and even like
Very nice.
and even like before going on the date, he obviously realizes that this is something she's serious about. Like, it's not just a frivolous, like, oh, we're gonna go on a date kind of thing.
Like the way that she communicates.
Yeah,
It is
like there's obviously something serious that she wants to talk about or do on this date. So
yeah, it's like she says to him, like, just like, bear with this a little bit longer. Like, she has something that she wants.
Yeah.
So she acts like, she also says, like, I basically like semi-threatened him to come on this date, but like,
yeah,
he clearly recognized that he needed to be patient with her and spend the time with her.
Yeah. We also saw baby True Form, which is weirdly adorable.
It's weird. I think the baby True Form's tail is the weirdest part, which we saw in the True Form chapter. The baby face is not so bad. Plus, I think Takaya's drawing style has changed a little bit in between those two times.
Yeah.
So it's a little more...
Yeah, it's got stubby little ears.
It has more kitty-shaped eyes. Stubby ears, yeah. No tail shown. Also, the way that this happens, Kagura's like, oh, I forced you. But, like, it's such a kid thing to do, to be like, I want to wear this. I want to do this. Give me the bracelet. And then she, like, pulls it off, and it's like, I bet you regret that.
Yeah.
And yeah, actually she did. She regretted it for, until now. It ate away slowly at her conscience for all this time, I guess. But, I mean, it's such a kid thing to happen. It's really funny to me. And it's really, I don't know, a not very natural story, I guess.
Yeah, it's kids are like that. It's like, I want to see this now. Let me have it. Like,
we wear a bracelet for a while. Kyo was like, please don't do that.
Yeah. And we also see Kagura's mom again at the end. And this is another one of those ones we've talked about, like the Zodiac kids and their relationships with their parents before. Yeah. And we've seen that, like, in the past we've seen Kagura's mom, and she did seem, they seemed on good terms. And so it's kind of, this is another one of those ones where it's like, you see, like, it was rough when they were younger, but they're working through it compared to some of the other ones. And so it's another, nice one to see them, still on good terms. She's still concerned about her daughter and everything.
Yeah, they seem to have, like, a kind of regular mom-daughter relationship, so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was nice. It was nice to see her added a little bit in this chapter. So.
Yeah. I don't think we ever see her dad. Are they probably divorced?
I don't know, maybe. Or he just isn't there, which is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Separated in some way after the stress.
Perhaps. It's not clear. We'll never know. But
yeah. It's just kind of an assumption I think I've come to after reading this.
He's certainly never shown.
She says, because she says, my parents often fought because of me, and whenever I saw Mama crying by herself afterwards, and, in the present day, she just seems to be with her mother.
We never see her dad. We see her with her mom. Yeah. And then we also see, like, Arena's living with them, too, and I assume if it was an environment where people were fighting all the time, why would they want Rin to be there? So maybe it's just her and her mom. I don't know. That's complete conjecture, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, just... Yeah, just some speculation.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. If they're certainly physically separated.
More of the Zodiac parents probably could have been okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Separating.
Probably. Considering some of the circumstances, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Is that everything that happened? Feels like it.
I think so.
It was
just like two really big dramatic conversations.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of funny how a conversation can be so dramatic. Basically, all Kagura is just like one conversation with Kyo and all these memories that are interspersed. And the other one is like Toru's one conversation with Shishou, which was actually carried over 2 chapters. And then just like a bit at the end of this like kind of resolution of that at the end. Yeah. And also Rin was there. I mean, okay, good. This was fun. I was really excited to talk to you today. I was excited that we read these. It was good. A good 2 chapters. A nice hearty 2 chapters, I felt. So, I guess that's it for this episode, unless you stick around for some spoilers. Yeah. Next time we're going to talk about chapters 69 and 70, so it's going to be a good time. I think it's mostly some Rin stuff this time. We're finally going to get more stuff about Rin. So you can always send us questions or comments or anything on our Tumblr, which is staytogetherpodcast.tumblr.com. Yeah. And then also Twitter's at staytogetherpod. It's like I know these things. I don't know. Now they're in my browser history now. I don't need to remember anything anymore, which is fantastic. It's the way that I like it. Okay, thank you all for listening and always for supporting us. It's always so nice. We will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. Are you ready to talk about Fruits Basket spoilers?
Sure.
We were just talking about Full Metal Alchemist, if anybody was curious.
No spoilers.
No spoilers. Only just about how nice the Full Metal Edition ones are, if you're the kind of person who buys books.
Yeah. They're pretty.
They're very nice. I concur. I own them now because I wanted them in my heart. They're shiny. They have shiny foil on them, which is important.
I'm currently coveting them, but I think I will own them soon.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah, I took a couple of the major ones I remember, and they were fixed. So
that's good.
Also, they undid the weird censorship in one chapter that I remember, where there was like someone was chained to a rock that was obviously in a cross shape, and they made it into like a weird lump of rock for the for the American release because
Jesus ? Question mark.
I guess they thought someone would be upset, so they changed it. But I looked it up, and it's back.
But
to
there's
a
lot
cross
of
shape
weird. The whole thing has that whole chapter has weird Christian imagery. Like that's the whole point. Like anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
It's fine. Everything's fine. Or not that whole chapter, but like that section, I guess, like that story.
Yeah, there's definitely some, intentional imagery like that in there. Not a lot, not like Chrono Crusade, but
yes. Well, that's good. Censorship is not the best. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Is that a politically correct thing to say? I mean, I'm so funny and timely, huh?
We're gonna produce this podcast and we're just gonna bleep out you saying censorship is not the best.
Censorship is beep. So good. Okay, let's talk about some spoilers, and then we can go to bed. I mean, spoiler things. This is what I wrote. My list is kind of short because now we're getting to this. I think we're in the changeover where things are happening instead of being spoiled. I was like, well, we talked about this before, and we talked about this before, but it's like, I guess the Aikido, like, dead bird imagery is...
He knows we're about to talk about dead birds again.
That's why I laughed. That was, if I decide to leave that in, that's Kayla's bird. He's been commenting this whole time about all our dead bird talk.
He's not a fan. He thinks we should censor.
It's not very politically correct to talk about dead birds. The image of Aikido, the imagery of the dead bird. There's other imagery of dead birds, obviously. Kind of like...
this is not the last time we will see the dead bird in association with Aikido.
But like specifically the one that I'm thinking of is the one that's associated with Kureno getting stabbed. So I was kind of unsure if this actually relates to that or if it's just like some bird. There's just a bunch of bird imagery that's associated with Aikido. I think for the reason that you pointed out that we've talked about before, that's like, birds are caged, they're fragile, etc., etc. Like it's more of a symbol at this point for Aikido.
Yeah, I do think I think the bird is a symbol, and I think kind of Kureno's relationship with Aikido is kind of symbolic of the whole bond and curse situation. Like they're kind of a direct one-to-one.
That's true.
Like extreme version of it, basically.
Yeah, I guess. But then yet his curse is broken, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, but how Kureno's like even more isolated than a lot of the other Zodiac, and even more under Aikido's control, and gets even more, physically hurt by Aikido than.
It seems to be even more like
a lot of the
kind
others.
Of bonded to Aikido, more loyal to Aikido than some of the others.
Yeah. Despite
the curse being broken for him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any other things to say about the dead bird. Hopefully your bird will be satisfied.
Yeah. Just one of those things that make you go, ooh,
yeah.
When you're rereading
I was like, oh, what? Because there's blood on Akito's like clothes. Like, it's not like the bird is just dead and Akito's like meh. It's like Aikido clearly did something. It's implied that Aikido did something to injure the bird or kill the bird. I'm just like, whoa. The next one that I wrote down was Tohru's kind of like be yourself thought sequence.
I do think there's obviously some connection here between like her anxieties regarding her mom
Mm-hmm.
that we're starting to get a view of, and her growing feelings for Kyo.
Yes.
It's like we even say like right away when like we have her remembering her mom when it talks about the
Mm-hmm.
bond. And then in here she remembers her mom in addition to everyone else there, and then it kind of focuses on Kyo at the end, and she looks kind of surprised, like she's starting to realize
Mm-hmm.
something, and then it gets interrupted by Rin showing up before she can like looks like kind of fully
Yeah, have that thought.
kind of manifest what she's thinking of. Yeah.
And we have the like as in your in the grand feather theory that unites
Mm-hmm.
all of this story.
Yes.
There's these like kind of white petals. So we have this imagery of white petals, and we talked about it before. I think when there's sort of the potential of like a new bond forming. Didn't we talk about this with
Mm-hmm.
like Hana? I didn't look this up before this episode, but we talked about this with Hana, I think.
Yeah, we've talked about it, like we've seen it. It seems to be our kind of general theory, I think, is that the white feathers are kind of positive bonds and relationships, and the black feathers are kind of negative aspects of the
Mm-hmm.
same,
I think so.
which is nicely illustrated in these chapters. I don't know if I brought these up when I was first establishing my theory.
I don't
I
know.
think I might have missed these, but
It's subtle, and it's
Mhm.
like it's this shape, the actual form, like the visual form of these is like the white one is more of like a petal rather than a feather.
yeah,
And then there's dark Kagura is like dark sort of shape. It's almost like to me it looks more like a leaf. Like it looks kind of like
hmm
leaves or like petals as
there's
well.
like there's like leaves blowing through the previous panels,
Mm-hmm.
but then I get like the dark shadow look over those couple of ominous
Yeah,
panels.
you're right.
Yeah, which like so they're not maybe strictly feathers, but they're definitely the same kind of imagery.
Yeah, I think we could maybe establish that they're interchangeable. So a lot of times
Yeah,
earlier on it's feathers, but sometimes it's petals and sometimes it's leaves, and so now you have this kind of like that sort of
yeah,
floating object, I guess.
yeah. And a lot of times, like when they're obviously meant to be some kind of like symbolic image, they're kind of solid white or solid
Mm-hmm.
black. Because you can see, like in previous
The kind of
panels, they're just floating
gray
through. They're just feathers. But
leaves or whatever
yeah,
feathers.
but then when they get to those panels, they're like fully
Mm-hmm.
shadowed.
Yeah, it's a very deliberate change in the like shape of it. So or the
Mm-hmm.
whatever the shading. I have a question for you about this scene, unrelated to like spoiler. It's like kind of kind of spoilery because it could be encompass the whole story, but this message. So I feel like the message of be yourself is very strong versus do something.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Yeah.
in our non-spoiler discussion we talked about how Tohru is trying to seeking something to do, and the answer that keeps
Mm-hmm.
coming up over and over again is to just be the person that she is.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if like do you think that that's something that's like a theme like or like a message that Takaya's trying to tell us, like it's more important to be yourself, or like to is it something about being like genuine and that's more important than like action, or is it specifically about Tohru? Is it a general theme or is it specifically about Tohru?
I don't know, but I think specifically about Toru for this part,
Yes.
I think part of it is that being herself is being the kind of person who wants to do something.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, this is a weird like cyclical like
yeah,
the
yeah, because like Toru wouldn't be herself if she wasn't trying to, because not wanting to break the curse to help people. Like that is
Yeah.
herself. That is her
the act
the
of going to
positive
talk to Shishou.
aspect of her personality that makes her such a positive influence on everyone
Mhm.
here.
And her ability to make like a genuine connection with people.
Yeah.
Yeah. She is someone who's sort of like we've seen her be predisposed to action, which is kind of interesting. Because like for example, when Akito shows up at school the first time, she pushes Akito.
hmm
She stands in front of between Akito
Yeah.
and Momiji.
Yeah, I think we've talked about how like the kind of reputation Toru has as a shoujo protagonist, and I think she's kind of seen as just kind of a passive, like
Yeah, everything's
you know,
good. I love
just
everyone.
smiles and makes everything better kind of person. But she's really a fairly active protagonist. Like she does a lot of
Yes.
things. She causes things to
Yes.
happen. Like
Especially
things don't happen just to her.
no. Nothing happens to her except well, actually, that's not true. The reason that she's there is because she camped on their land. So she actively was like, the plan that I have is that I'm not going to impose on my
Yeah.
friends. I'm going to set up a camp myself.
hmm Yeah, she's very independent and proactive. She's just very polite about it, so she doesn't come off as like the typical
Yeah.
kind of independent and proactive protagonist.
Like she had to call Shishou. It's not like she just like ran into him and was like, "Oh, by the way, do you know anything about the curse?" It was like she when she left the beach, she had a plan in mind. When they got home, she was
Yeah.
like, "I'm gonna call Shishou. I'm gonna talk to him. He probably knows something."
Mm-hmm.
Even
Yeah.
early on, like the memory that's alluded to, like I mentioned before, the one with Shigure when she's leaving the house, she's like, "Is there something that I need to do?" Like it was already sort of
Yeah.
something on her mind, as if there was something that she kind of like needed to be there for, a reason that she needed to be there.
And again, that's the kind of person she is. So, by being herself.
You're right. That's a good point. It's clear. If you actually look at what's happening, it's clear that she's actively making these things happen. She actively seeks
Yeah.
to deepen her relationships with people that she meets in a genuine way, and tries to do things, like tries to act in a way that do the things that they need. Like she says in the true form thing that she was uncomfortable, like she didn't want to run after Kyo, but she knew that if she didn't go and talk to him, he would never come back. She's like kind of set up as I think we can feel a lot of sympathy for Kagura's character, but Tohru is set up as being like a foil for her specifically in that way. So that scene, of course, alludes to her relationship with Kyo. Like she's realizing something, like you said. And then did we finish talking about how her mom and the bond with her mom? So we talked about in the non-spoiler discussion, we talked about this, how her mom is also, this like one little sequence is so important to the like interpretation of these chapters, because her mom is also there, and Shisho's having this discussion with her about the bond, and this bond they have with blood, how deep the bond is between the Junichi, and it's like something that outsiders don't understand. And what she thinks of when he talks about this is her mother, and she says a bond is sacred.
Yeah. I think it's definitely feeding into the beginning of her anxieties about like forgetting her mom and everything that's starting to crop up. Yeah.
Yeah, we had the one scene from the beach where she was thinking about her mother, and the memories that she has with her, and of course that anxiety is going to keep building. And I think like her feelings for Kyo are also what cause more and more of that anxiety is going to start to cause it to like snowball.
Yeah.
So we get a very, very small peek at that, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
It's like these other people who are important to her and Kyo. Like you can tell by the
Yeah, he definitely gets his own like very specific focused panel there.
He gets a very prominent treatment in that panel there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rin?
I guess Rin, yeah.
So always the order is Tohru, then Rin, and then Kyo and Kagura, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So of course this is just the beginning of Rin and Tohru's destined, fated friendship, right?
Yeah.
Where Rin is like, I fucking hate her that she's involved.
Yeah.
It's not like she has anything against Tohru. It's really interesting how her
No.
Other than the fact that she's like, she knows that she's later she's like, oh, I knew that when I met her I would end up like crying all over her or something. I can't remember exactly. So other than, just the feelings of empathy exuding from Tohru that Rin is trying to avoid.
Yeah.
It's not like she has anything.
She also doesn't want her to get hurt.
Yes.
Yeah. She doesn't want anyone else to get involved because she doesn't want anyone else to get hurt. That's why she's trying to tackle this all by herself, and why she dumped Haru.
Yeah. It's why she does everything. It's why she like doesn't talk to anybody. It's why she acts the way that she acts. And then I think it's interesting, her relationship. We talked briefly about her relationship with Shishou, because they do have a relationship. There's like an earlier scene with her when she's much younger where he came to see her in the hospital.
Yeah.
One time when she was really sick, because she says that she had a lot of like health problems as a child or whatever. It comes up. I don't know if it's going to come to the next chapter, but it's going to come quite soon, where we get more of her backstory.
And didn't he kind of take her in a little bit too?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Like at the dojo.
Yeah, probably. I'm not sure exactly how it ends up. She ends up staying with him at the end. Like she ends up back there. But right at this point in time, I think she's still staying with Kagura.
Didn't she like come when she was younger though, for some period of time?
I think that's what happened after that time that I'm remembering, where he saw her in the hospital.
Yeah.
I think he kind of was like, "Why don't you come stay with me for a while?" Because he's the good Soma dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and her parents were like, "Whatever, I don't care if you ever come back or whatever," which is awful.
Yeah.
So yeah, so they definitely have a past relationship. So I think it's on the nose to say like the reason he treats her that way is because like he feels like he can treat her that way, as opposed to someone like Kido who he has to really feels like he has to treat with like kid gloves, right?
Yeah, yeah, because he's familiar with Rin, but I don't think they have any like misgivings about their relationship, like he does, like he and Kyo have.
No, I mean I imagine that Rin would think that they have a good relationship? Question mark. I mean, as good as any other person.
Yeah, yeah.
I think she probably trusts him. That's the only reason why she would ask about the curse or go there and act that way. It wasn't it wasn't like that scene with Shigure. I'm just laughing because like it wasn't like that at all. But it wasn't like the scene where she goes to visit Shigure and she's all like she's pretty standoffish. Like she doesn't come in at first.
Yeah.
And then she acts like she can seduce. I think she does. Doesn't she try to kind of like seduce Shigure? Like it wasn't like it wasn't not sexual. Like
yeah, it's I don't remember if it was in that scene or a different one, but she basically at one point straight up says like, if I sleep with you, will you tell me?
Like,
and
I don't know.
he's like, I don't actually know.
Please stop.
So
yeah, something like that. But yeah, it's not. So it's not like that. It's not like this like weird like she doesn't see their relationship as being like quid pro quo or like needing to be like stay distanced from Shishou. Like they have a different relationship. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, like she obviously feels like she can, just barge in and
demand
ask
good questions.
Yeah,
so it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of fun, those things you see, like you can tell that they have some kind of relationship from this first interaction, even like on your first read, and so like going back to it's kind of fun. You're like, yeah. They are familiar with each other
from before. Yeah,
first conversation.
You can tell. I think that's the only Rin spoiler. I mean, and I guess they're just gonna end up working together.
It's kind of her.
Yeah, it's a spoiler. You're right. What am I saying? Are there any? There's no more like Shishou or like. There's no more Cosmo spoilers. No more Kagura spoilers, right?
Not really. I mean, we kind of know all we know about them.
Yeah, I think so. We don't get any more backstory about Kagura. I guess there's a bit more of her like.
Yeah, she still shows up, but we don't really get any more big reveals or anything.
I mean, it's more of a Tohru spoiler, but she's the one who's like, you need to tell him about your feelings.
Yeah, that's a cool
I love it.
part. Like I like the Kagura Rin interaction in that.
They have an interesting relationship. It's really interesting that well, we probably talked about it before already at length, where Rin is like, stop with the act, and Kagura's like, why are you being so mean? Yeah. And then she remembers it again, because I mean, it's true. So Rin knows this thing that's like very true about her, which is interesting to me.
Yeah.
And Kagura knows it.
Yeah, I feel like Rin has a lot of like almost familial relationships with people. Like Kazuma's kind of almost a fatherly relationship with her. Kagura's kind of almost a sisterly relationship with her.
Yuki's
not quite,
kind of like a little brother to her.
Yeah, because Hiro.
Yes, yeah.
But because of how Rin is, like, then not quite.
Yeah. Rin is like, I wish everyone stopped caring about me so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think there's any more. I don't know. Shishou's like always around, but it's not like there's more like spoilers about him.
Yeah, his whole deal is basically, for the rest, is just basically like, yeah, I'm not gonna fucking let Kyo get in that building.
Or like, I'm not gonna let all these, people be imprisoned for the rest of their lives. Because it's really not just Kyo. I mean, like, the others can leave the compound, but like, they're still in kind of imprisoned by this bond. I think it's established in this chapter that.
Yeah, he obviously cares about them all, but obviously he has a huge motivation. Like, even in here, in this chapter, he straight up says, like, I'm not going to let that happen without a fight. Like, when she's talking about Kyo being confined.
He's very clear about where he stands on this whole situation every time we see him. He said that to Kyo's dad. Now he's telling Tohru.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like those are the spoilers. I don't know if there's any more. I mean, Akito is there, but they talked about Akito being weak and stuff, but very briefly.
Yeah, the big Akito stuff is still to come.
Yes. So it is. Anyway, good times are coming. And by good times I mean extremely bad times are coming.
Yeah. And then good times.
And then good times. It can only get worse and then better from here.
Yes.
Okay, good. Next time we're going to talk about chapter 69 and 70, which is going to be about Rin. It's going to be a good time. I'm excited, as I said before. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.